All right, so I think I got item number one. It's too bad Philippe wasn't able to make it today, so I'll do my best channeling of Philippe and probably do a poor job of it. So Philippe has been as part of the demo that Philippe for the Contribute conference that Philippe and Nico, one of our very prolific users, are working on. He's using CNS and WAF. He tried to use CNS and WAF and other things, and has some good feedback. So the first one, kind of in this, wasn't really intended as dog fooding, but we did learn a lot from it, was CNS is built upon CI/CD based managed apps, which are still considered alpha. Do we know when they'll be considered more than alpha? Does that align with CNS being more than alpha? So I'm not saying we made a poor decision in the past. It's just a statement where we're at currently. So Sam, you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I don't know when that's going to move out of alpha. We're actually only expanding our use there. So container host security, I believe, uses managed apps. And just recently, someone else in the company contributed to one of our issues to help add support for WAF through managed apps. So we're only relying more on that, not less. Given our current priorities and the size of our team, it's unlikely that we're going to have any bandwidth whatsoever to contribute to moving that out of alpha anytime in the near future. I suppose if it's still in alpha in like 2021, then at that point we might open the discussion to see if we do something about it. But otherwise, I think we're just going to have to leave it as it is and either wait for the configure team to move it out of alpha, or just note that, hey, as part of this, you're going to be using an alpha piece of functionality.
Arthur has a good relationship with that team. Do you want to verbalize it, Arthur? I see you writing there.
As far as I know, the work on GitLab managed app is parked right now, and there is a chance there will be a shift in direction completely with the agent. So yeah, as Sam mentioned, we're dependent on them. There is not much we can do, and we just need to wait for their decision on that, because it's ultimately not in our responsibility to manage this sort of things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think we should be managing it. I just want to make sure we're aware of it. Do they know that we're dependent on them for this?
Yes, they would know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It's similar, like we are not alone up there. Monitoring stuff is also dependent on the same thing, and they do exactly the same thing. The one thing I wanted to mention, like monitor team does a bit better than us. They don't treat the whole integration part as a product itself. They like introduce more features and treat GMA part as just a prerequisite for their features. If it makes sense, I think it will be good for us to shift, and I think we are shifting already towards this with various dashboards and alerts and other features that we are adding on top of the Cilium, because from my perspective, Cilium installation is a low value feature itself. Like under the hood, we're essentially executing a single Helm command. So there is honestly no problem for users to do the same command themselves, and documentation for Cilium and WAF is borderline amazing. So I don't know, I recognize this an issue with GMA, but at the same time, I don't really think it's such a critical thing to over focus on it.
If monitor uses considers as a prerequisite, doesn't it mean that they depend on it as well?
Again, monitor is really flexible. Like all the features require Prometheus and Elastic Stack, but Prometheus can be installed through the GMA1. Prometheus can be installed through the GMA2. Prometheus can be installed manually. And in all three cases, all the monitoring features will be working. I think that mindset is really important for us to adapt, because saying that GMA is the hard requirement for our features is kind of dead end because we essentially can't move forward GMA by ourselves. So I think adapting what this monitor is doing, like this mindset, is really important for us.
I think I understand what you're saying now. In that case, Wayne and Sam, the work that Philippe has been doing, sort of consolidating and giving a clear high-level view of how to connect those dots, is kind of plays into what Arthur is saying, it doesn't it?
Yeah, and it kind of relates.
Yeah.
Sure, Sam. Good.
Yeah. So that documentation effort, I mean, you know, that was one of the items, was to make our products more independent from that, so that we could do that very thing, so that we were flexible, right? So that we could at least not require them to use an alpha feature for their base code management project. And it turns out that that's possible. We just need to improve our documentation on how to do all of that. So that's what Philippe has been working on. I think he just recently finished it. I still need to go through and read that new documentation in depth, but we're getting there.
It did get merged. I actually just reviewed. I did a first pass review today. I'll put the link in our document. So it kind of goes into a segment. So Philippe also found that CNS and WAF were not peacefully coexisting. And Arthur and Zamir, thanks again for your help with the demo project and leading that in the right direction. I think it was partially that CNS is the alpha version of managed apps, and WAF is the older stuff. So Zamir, I know you mentioned, well, you mentioned here maybe we need to just document this, perhaps. Sorry, I put the question out there. So Sam, you're concerned about this. You want to verbalize your thoughts that you wrote here?
Yeah, so I mean, Zamir's point sort of supersedes mine. I was not aware of this, and it sounds like actually they can coexist. You just need to follow some specific instructions to set it up, to set them both up. In any case, like, we're not planning to either deprecate WAF or integrate that functionality into container network security anytime soon. Again, with our team size, we have pretty limited bandwidth, and so that would probably consume our entire team for the rest of the year. So that's really, at best case scenario, a 2021 item. So if there are major limitations that we're not able to address in documentation, then we would just note it as a limitation and leave it there.
Zamir, to your point, you think we need to document how to do it. It's not that they're incompatible. It's that it's really hard to make them compatible because we don't have the right documentation. So we need to update the documentation. I think is where you landed. Did I get that right?
Yeah, we maybe we could improve the documentation for that, or specify how you can put both of them together. But also on the point that Sam mentioned earlier is that people are contributing WAF to the Git for the GMA v2. So then maybe in the future we can just have everything done by v2. I don't know.
And I did assign that to Philippe so you can take a look at updating the document. Arthur, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it's pretty much on our end that we failed that because I'm pretty sure that the situation was mentioned several times, and there are two issues related to that already open in the issue tracking, one under configure and one under us for the class applications that was fixed, but we just didn't work on that. So maybe we can improve on process up there. But my ultimate impression was that we just deprioritized like a lot of work on WAF for a while. Even if you will go and check the MR, it's a really small piece of work. We could definitely do it ourselves, but it was never scheduled. So maybe while WAF is not perfect, maybe still continue kind of supporting at least somehow. It will be an option.
Yeah, there's a balance there to be struck. We wouldn't pick it up this iteration because we've already committed to a significant challenge. But I wouldn't mind having a look after that if there's a good balance of you know, small effort and good value there in previous documentation or addressing that issue. Maybe we can have a look at it, Sam. But Wayne, I think the net is that it is known, right? And it was known. It's a
It was
priority.
known. It wasn't known to Philippe, so he got tripped up by it, or maybe it was and he forgot about it. But you know, we all work on many things, so that happens. So maybe a combination of looking at the things that would make it easier and updating the documentation. The combination of that would make that better, perhaps. Arthur, if you could add the links, you know, offline to the issues that or the MR, well, the issues that you mentioned, just so we can keep track of them, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will add it after the
Cool.
call.
So last one, and I kind of raised my eyebrow at this one. Some cloud providers provide WAF and CNS, and according to Philippe, in fact, if a customer uses our CNS with Google's GCP, the customer loses the ability to get support from Google on the network layer. And he's concerned also maybe a similar pattern with AWS and Azure. Should this impact our plans and if how? And Sam, you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, so my thought is that it seems a little bit odd to me that they would do that. I can't speak 100% authoritatively here. I don't know for certain, but it does look like Google supports use of Kubernetes network policies, and Cilium network policies are just an extension of that. So I'm not sure exactly what we're doing or where the line is where we would break that support boundary, but it's probably worth getting some more information there, you know, just to double check that we are invalidating support and see if there's anything we can do to work around that.
Yeah.
Where did you get that, Wayne?
I'm channeling Philippe here. So this was so maybe another thing on all of these is we're operating a little bit without, you know, being able to get more ask Philippe clarifying questions. So maybe I don't know if somebody wants to take this an action item, Sam or Tiago, is you know, have a session with Philippe in real time to kind of talk through these in more detail. I think we've had a good discussion so far, but I think we need to hear, you know, directly from Philippe on these. And Arthur, you had some thoughts on this as well, I see in the notes.
Yeah, I think this concern is valid, but I just wanted to mention that essentially some providers are vendor working network policy implementation, notably GKE and Azure. They essentially, like when we started working, they had some baseline support for Calico, but I checked the docs for both. They essentially wrote their own implementation that we obviously can't integrate with. We can't do things like monitoring, we can't do alerts. So essentially, we can only provide baseline features for those network policy provider implementation. So I firmly think that supporting open source product in this case gives us more possibilities. And another comment about the support, it's also valid comment, but I'm not sure if it's actually ultimately valid, because in case of like Google Cloud, that what our company is using for Kubernetes, Cilium is actually only manages overlay network of Kubernetes, and it uses native routing, and it doesn't even do AP management. So essentially, from the perspective of Google admins, it will be Google's network, and they would need to chase on the support level any network issues anyway. Again, it's a gray area, because Kubernetes essentially uses overlay. Like when you work with Kubernetes, you will be thinking about overlay network, but in most cases, obviously overlay network is not self-contained thing. It needs a host network. And yeah, I think there still should be support. And at the end, if our SRE team wants support, we can, like they can support by support from Cilium at the end of the day, right? And they provide that commercial option. So I definitely think there are options. Concern is valid, but from perspective of our team, the choice that we made with open source product is the better one than relying on supporting multiple vendor locked solutions.
And Thierry, I see your comment here. You're asking Philippe for some more clarification on it. So
Yeah,
we'll go from there.
and what Arthur's saying there makes a lot of sense to me. So it's still a valid concern, and we should have a position on its Sam, perhaps, where here's what you need to do if you want to be supported. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think first steps, let's try to get more details about, about what might break that support and see if we can work around it. And I agree, in that case, we do need to come up with some sort of a position.
I'm thinking an issue for that would be good, because then we can collect the information from Philippe and use the issue to discuss, okay, what do we want to do? What's our position? And is it just some documentation? Do we need to do some work? Do we need to talk to the cloud providers? We'll figure out. I'll write the issue.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds good.
I think to expand on some of the points I mentioned before, I think we need the actual bulk of the product that we consider product. Again, installing network policy provider is not a product right by itself, but once, let's say, we have working alerts and monitoring and other pieces of work that we plan to do on top of Cilium, we can go back and say, hey, what parts we actually can support on specific cloud. Maybe we will introduce the support and just block out the rest of the features. So user will be encouraged to kind of consider Cilium as an option, because they're essentially missing out on features that they might be interested in. But I think because Cilium gives us way more than any vendor locked cloud provider, we should use it as baseline for now. And similar to any other product, like let's say WAF can be installed through the Google Cloud. There is a paid option for that. There's a paid product. Similar with AWS, they have a WAF product. So installing the WAF and CRS policies, like we can't beat up there, right? Because there will be always this magical button in somewhere on the cloud dashboard where you can one-click install this thing, and we can't provide more convenient way of installing than that. But if we will have more features like providing better policies for WAF or additional monitoring, analytical services, or even intelligent response options, user will definitely consider switching out of the cloud provider limited options.
So, yep, thanks, Arthur. We ready to move on to different set of items? So,
sure.
I think 1B, so completely switching gears from the feedback from Philippe on from the demo for Contribute. So noticed it was actually early Monday morning that on sometimes Sunday is that the team working on making it so that we can easily give customers access to logs from container security. They're ready for us, which is awesome. So should we add, so my question is, should we add to the roadmap the ability to quickly jump over to see those logs? And Sam, you have some initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I can work with Kyle to start thinking about the design for that. You know, if we were to rewind several months, this was like a really high priority item. At this point, you know, A, there's a way to see it now in the GitLab UI, which first of all, that's phenomenal. I'm super excited that they got that done. And B, we have the export to SIM functionality as well. So it's now possible to view logs in two places. Linking over and in would be a nice to have, but I view it as sort of a secondary, it's an enhancement, and we have areas that don't even exist yet that are desperately needed. So it kind of gets pushed a little bit further out on the backlog. You know, maybe we can find a cheap way to do it. Maybe we can just put out some documentation, but we have a small team, so, you know, forces us to prioritize ruthlessly here.
Yeah, so perhaps we start with documentation, just telling in the container security documentation, tell people how to go over to the logs. That's a good first step, perhaps. And Arthur, you sent here cross-linking directly to the namespace that would have to be selected is not possible currently.
Yeah, so when you select drop-down URL, it doesn't change, so you can't really create a URL that will pre-select drop-down options. It's probably a really easy fix for monitor team, so we might just get back to them and say, hey, can you add this
That
cool
sounds a
feature
lot like the vulnerability, the default level on the vulnerability dashboard that always
yeah,
defaults to blank.
I don't know why we do that, but URLs are really important.
Yeah.
Because like it literally gives us no option to integrate with this page. It works. I checked it yesterday. It's possible to check. Like if you go to demo cluster and monitor page, you can select GMA namespace and then check all the logs that you need. But
That's great.
the problem is, you can't really link to this page other than
Yeah.
to the base page, and then
An anchor or a query string shouldn't be too hard, as you say.
Zamir, you have a thought on this as well? I see in the notes.
Yeah, it's just that we have alerts in the roadmap. I think alerts are going to provide a lot in terms of which log entries are going to be something to pay attention or not. Not diminishing the general log, but I'm not sure at this point if it's a huge thing for us.
Okay, good. Yeah, great context. So anybody want to volunteer to do to make the documentation change? If not, I'd be happy to do it, but if somebody wants to do it more than me.
I will take you up on that any day, Wayne. I've only got 2 developers to work with, so the less other stuff I can give them, the more they get done, right?
Yeah, very good point. I was kind of volunteering leaders like myself.
So, I feel like you're talking to Lindsay and I'll take it.
No. Actually, I haven't done a documentation change in a while. I'll take it.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, please don't get me wrong on this one. I am, heads over heels excited that they got this done for us. I only have 2 developers, so I'm, very protective of their time.
And it's not simple. It's not trivial because you can't go to the drop down directly. It's not just adding something on the page and a link over.
Right.
It's not as straightforward as it possibly could have been. So cool. All right. So last one. So yeah, I guess we have time. So I got in the CEO Shadow program, I got a bunch of different disconnected information that I had before it that then I really was able to put together and understand the go-to-market plan when I did the Shadow program. So we put things for free, aka in core, in the open source portion of GitLab, because we want developers to use it, right? And we want developers to love it. And that's the land part of our land and expand. I know, Sam, you know this really well, but for other folks, that's the land part of the land and expand go-to-market strategy. And because we want developers to use it for open source projects and where they work, and they want to, so that they really love it, it does a better job than other things that they have, they can start using it for free. And then the expand are features that people who control budgets at those customers where the developers are, have money to spend on, like they want security, or they want monitoring, or they want, the ability to set, various features like, merge request approvals, I believe is a paid feature versus a free feature. And we're spending a lot of time, as we should, on features that, that people will want to pay for. And I'm not saying we should change anything on on those features that we've either built, nor on features that we're planning to build, that we already have in the roadmap. What I'm thinking is, should we have things that will go into core that will make it so that it's easier for developers to install and to make it more attractive for developers to want to use our features. Examples might be, one example is to make it easier to install and straightforward to install. It might be example projects, or, that say, use this and you get a container that already has, a cluster that has, CNS and WAF and host already there. Everything's already configured. How reasonable or feasible that is, I don't know. Or another is example policies. We give developers policies so developers can say, my security team is telling me I don't have any network policies, so at least I have something to start with, right? So example policies, perhaps. So it's an idea. I'm not sure it's a good idea, but just when I see everything in the roadmap being paid features and we don't have that much usage yet, it makes me think that those paid features are great. I wouldn't change any of them. Is that we should also have some of these other things, perhaps.
Yeah, so I guess to talk to what I wrote here, I'm a little bit confused because I don't really see developers using Defend at all. I just don't see that as a primary persona for what we're doing. And like if we're talking about going and having all of the developers, even look at our own team, right? Like Arthur's writing code, Zamir's writing code for GitLab itself, but those are not the people who are managing the security of GitLab. Like Arthur is not managing network policy. Neither of those individuals are managing our web application firewall that we currently have deployed in front of GitLab. These are not the people who are responsible for those kinds of tasks. So I think the primary persona for all of Defend is actually not the developer. It's not about getting a whole lot of users using it. In fact, we've changed our metric to not focus on users. Instead, we're focusing on the number of clusters where it's turned on and deployed, because we don't ever anticipate having massive crowds of people using this. But your point is well taken that we want to make this easier to use and a little bit more turnkey. I would just rephrase that to say we want it to be easy for the SecOps team to adopt and set up. Almost all of what we've done today is available in core, and our roadmap is focused very heavily on paid features. I'm not sure how much we can push. So the big thing that we introduced to help make it easier were two sets of features, right? We introduced our controls, which was kind of the point and click button to install WAF. We were not able to give a point and click for container network policies or container host security because you actually have to restart the networking, restart all of your pods in the cluster, and that's a very disruptive change that we didn't want to have that be just a point and click and somebody suddenly rebooted their production environment. So we're making it as easy as we can without making it so easy that you click the button and now your entire cluster network gets restarted and you've lost taken your production environment down for a number of minutes. But I like the idea of maybe having like a out of the gate template project where you've got something that's goes and deploys a fresh cluster and presets it all up for you. If you're trying to start up fresh, that might be an easy win on top of what we've done already. We are developing out of the box policy sets today. In fact, that's already in the works. So I think on that suggestion, we're actually making really good progress there.
Cool. No, that helps me. It's starting to really resonate with me. And, yeah, Arthur, you have some thoughts on this, and Thiago, it looks like you do as well.
Yeah, I want to say that I ultimately agree that our integrations are not the most refined and turnkey solutions ever, but I just want to say that, as I mentioned, they provide really well value from my perspective. At the same time, they already take a bit of time maintaining all those GMA and class application integrations. And on this basis, like improving further is really hard. Again, I mentioned under the hood is essentially a single Helm command, and the issue that like essentially providing this integration, we take a bit of the burden of the support, right? Like saying that if you are not able to install, users will go to us, and naturally we can't really provide them more. I think we will benefit more from providing links to the upstream documentation, still like installation, getting started guide for Gkey is, I think, 5 steps. Each step is just a single command. And I'm talking 5 steps with verification. Like WAF documentation is really good, and it's just a half a screen page. I think we can't really make a better docs ourselves. And our integration, like again, pushing this integration a bit further is, I don't even have a good suggestion how to do that right now. Like all the problems Philippe had and Nico, I completely recognize that, but again, what we could do in those situations is a bit unclear. Situation was obviously unique because it's Azure, but even not considering that. So yeah, I don't know what Sam thought about and not really making it a cornerstone of Defend, like providing essentially a wrap around already a simple Helm command. I see some value because it does provide us some visibility on the cluster application pages for free, just because we have those applications aware, but at the same time, I don't know. Like if I would be using Cilium myself, I would just install it through the docs. It's like really straightforward, and I guess familiarity with docs of the such products is always beneficial.
We're at
Trevor,
time.
Sure.
That's okay. Everybody can read it there. It's not that big of an insight.
Apologies for having most of the agenda today, but
That's all good. These are all really good visionary things. Just as we have our capacity, we are at capacity for this iteration, so we won't do anything about any of these things for a good month. But they're good discussions to have. Thank you for bringing them up. With that,
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it.
good day, everyone.